Welcome to the SCA Internal Quality Assurance webinar. During this webinar, you will be guided through the PowerPoint presentation whilst hearing the voice of our presenter, me, Ellie Elliot, the lead EQA. So please ensure your speakers are working and turned up. You do not require a webcam or a mic for this, and a copy of this webinar will be made available to you via the Safety Training Awards website shortly after completion. The following functionality will be available to you. Questions, you may ask Safety Training Awards a question. However, please be aware that due to the volume of questions which may be asked, there is no guarantee your question will be answered during the webinar. All unanswered questions we will respond via the email. Handouts, there are various handouts which will be available to download using the functionality shown on your screen. We hope you enjoy the webinar and you find it helpful and informative. Just waiting for this to... Okay, sorry about that. So what is internal quality assurance? Quality assurance is a system of maintaining and improving standards, which is a very overarching statement, but that effectively is what it is. So we'll move on now and we'll look at the main functions of the internal quality assurance. And I'm going to look at these separately. So compliance. We all need to be compliant, regardless of who we're working for, whether it's for STA, we're looking at OPPOL, or we're looking for our delivery organisation. So everything has to meet the standards that we are working to. We have to be accurate and we have to be consistent. And this is the action that we take beforehand. You need to ensure that your accuracy is important to make sure the end delivery is correct for your learners. And they are the important ones here. And that the decisions that we make are also accurate, because if we don't make the right decisions, nothing is reliable and it isn't compliant. So as part of the IQA role, we're identifying issues and trends, and we do this by using our sampling plan. As an IQA, you're in the best possible position to identify any recurring issues. As you will go through your sampling plan, you will pick these up. And this could be such an issue as problems with a unit or assessment practice, or inaccurate assessment or marking of assignments, but you will be in the position to identify those issues and trends. Sampling assessments. Sampling plans always seem to create a problem, but it says you as the IQA to plan very detailed sampling plans, which it's a lot of planning, I understand, but that's what it is. You sample the assessments. So as an IQA, you will need to look at the sample of work of others to ensure that it meets the requirements of the organisation, whether that be STA or any other awarding organisation, but it has to meet the standards of the qualification. Oh, it jumped. Supporting and developing assessors. These are our lifeblood, aren't they? If our assessors are working well, and we need to support and develop them. If they're not, again, they need the support and development. And we do this, which is one of the main functions that we do. It's the main IQA to make sure it's efficient. And that way we uphold integrity. All the way through, we need to uphold the integrity of the standards. Record keeping. How many of us hate record keeping? But it is so important. So you can go back at any time and check something. You can also have those records when you're developing your assessors. You say, I looked at your assessment sample this date and this is what you did well. Or I looked at it on this date and I gave you feedback and you still haven't addressed it. So this is what you need to do. You must always make sure that it is signed and dated. This helps with the validity and sufficiency. So moving on, the other functions, carrying out the IQA role. There are four main areas here: documenting, planning, and implementing. I was saying earlier on about record keeping. You need to document everything. I know it sounds silly, but it's amazing the amount of times we're walking along a corridor or walking to a building and somebody will ask you a question. And in all honesty, you have a conversation, but you don't document it. It's part of your standardisation, and you can use that in your planning process and the implementation of your standardisation. So please try and remember that even the smallest conversation, whether it's by email, print them off, use it, or a telephone call, record it. It doesn't have to be typed up. Just make sure that you've documented everything. That helps with your planning, because it might be that you're starting to see a trend come through from the conversations that you're having. So make sure that it comes into the planning process. So you might get 2 or 3 different assessors or tutors phoning you up or talking to you about the same issue. What do I do about? How do I do this? Document it and use it in the future. And that's how you start to implement the IQA process. It isn't about sitting down and just looking at paperwork. It's about the whole process, from people talking to you to the end result when your EQA comes to visit. Planning, supporting and monitoring learning, delivery and assessment. It's part of what I was just saying. Your planning is your sampling plan. You're supporting your learners, you are supporting your assessors and tutors, and you are supporting the awarding body by ensuring that everything, all the processes are correct. And that's how you're monitoring the learning and delivery. You're going to go out and you're going to be doing observations of tutors and assessors just to ensure the consistency of standards and assessment. It's also supporting your tutor and assessor in their performance. If you see something that you're not sure of, that they've not done, go back, have a look at the records that you've made before, and that way you'll understand whether the planning, the supporting and the monitoring is working for you. But overall, do not forget to record the information. And that's the 4th area, one of our main, recording and information management. As I started off by saying, you need to record all your information. If you don't, you may have a problem. The EQA could ask for something and say, when did you do a standardisation meeting? If you've only got one assessor, it's difficult to do a standardisation meeting as this. However, your records will show that you've had email conversations, you've had telephone conversations, you've had verbal conversations, but if you haven't recorded any of them, you have a problem. You have no proof that you have done any standardisation. So don't destroy any emails, record everything, keep everything, and you might think, oh, that's a lot of work, but I promise you it will help you in the future, because when something or trend arises, you have got the answers there. What you must also use in the IQA monitoring role is your EQA reports. They are a great source of evidence for you. And a lot of people think, oh, I've had an EQA visit, they've sent the report through, I'll put it in the file and I'll only pick it out just before they come for the next visit and look at the action plan. Don't do that. Make sure it's there as a source of support for you as an IQA, because it guides you through everything that you should do. It gives you the main areas that you're looking at resources, at assessment, at the sampling. It gives you all the information that you need. So please do remember, your information management is also your EQA, because they are there to support and guide you. Documenting, planning, and implementing internal quality assurance. This is a key part of the process. There's a written IQA policy, procedure, and strategy. IQA procedure, policy, and strategy. Effectively, some people call it all the same thing. Some people have one of each. You don't have to have one of each. You have to have a procedure, a policy, or strategy. It depends what you have, but that will guide you as to what you are going to do. So describe your IQA process. You need to know what it consists of, what you're going to do. So it'll tell you about your sample plans. It'll tell you how everything is planned and the rationale behind it of your sample plan, whether based on high, medium or low. Now this is about your tutors, your assessors. Are they high risk, medium risk or low risk? Which are they? If they're new to you, they may be high risk. If you know them well, you have been happy with their assessment all the way through, They haven't identified any trends or issues, it becomes low. However, if they're low, they can quite easily jump back up to high, because as soon as you've sampled something and you're not happy, you need to investigate it more, so they can immediately go back to high. The other way you could do this, where it's high, medium, low, rag rate them red, amber, green. So they could be high on a green, so you know the next one you could drop them down to medium. However you wish to do it is up to you, but they have to be planned and there has to be a rationale behind it. But please use high, medium, and low, or the rag rating, the red, amber, green, so you know where your assessors are. It's really easy to do that, because as soon as you pick up their work the next time you're sampling it, you know your starting point. So sampling techniques are employed in the sample. So this is talking about how you're going to do it. What are you going to sample? Are you going to sample all the evidence in the portfolio? Are you going to look at a themed, something that's just like, if you're just looking at their documentation? Are you just looking at their observations? It's your choice. What does your policy say to you that you're going to do? Have you planned your sample? So are you going to say, in September, I'm going to look at, I'll use Claire Brisbane as our director, are you going to look at Claire's observations, or are you going to sample her work as in the learner portfolios? That's what you need. You need to have employed in the sample some sampling techniques across the board. Appeals and complaints from learners are acted upon. You need to make sure, because it's you they're going to come back to after the tutor, that you have the evidence to back up the appeal, if there is one. They are few and far between, but you are the first point of call. In your appeals procedure, you will have a very clear policy and procedure of what you're going to do. So for the appeals, you will be drawing on all that information that we've talked about. You'll be drawing on observations. You'll be talking about previous work of that assessor to help you make the judgment on the appeal. The appeal is about that learner having the confidence that the decisions that you have made are correct and that your assessor's decisions are correct. If they're not, the appeal will stand. So please make sure that when you are sampling, your evidence that you are gathering is solid, because that's where your appeals and complaints will go through. It'll go through whatever you have sampled, because you're the one that's filling through. So appeals and complaints from learners are acted upon. Make sure you have all that evidence. Your sampling plans, your high, medium and low, and your policy and procedure. It all comes through the same process for the appeals and complaints. Do you know your appeals and complaints procedure? I know it's one of those silly questions that people ask, but the number of times I've been out to centre and say, what's your appeals and complaints procedure? And I get a blank look. It isn't a good start. So you need to be able to do that. When I talk to them about sampling techniques, what's your sampling technique? If I set out all the EQAs from SCA saying, right, these are the questions I'm going to ask you to ask the centres, would all of you be able to answer them? What's your sampling techniques? Who's high, medium and low? Where have you got the issues? What's your procedure and policy and strategy? Would you be able to do that? As your role as the IQA, you need to know this. It sounds more difficult, but it's about you saying, yes, my policy is that I sample all assessors on this. My theme is this. These are my high, these are my medium, these are my low, and this is the reason behind it. And I've not had any appeals or complaints. So you play a very important role as an IQA, and it isn't an easy role, but it isn't difficult either if your planning and your documentation is in place correctly. Liaison with the EQA. How many times have we had EQA visits and people go, oh, I've got an EQA visit. What am I going to do? You have to rely on your EQA. It has to, make sure it's positive and constructive. The tip I would give you, if you have an EQA coming in, and it's something that I always use EQAs, when we start our conversation very first thing, I tell them the issues I've had, because you can guarantee the EQA will find it. If you don't tell them, you try and hide something, I promise you they will find it, and that may create you more problem. So if you say to them, look, I've got this assessor, this is the issues I've had, this is what I've implemented, this is how I've supported them, that's absolutely fine. It is making sure that internal quality assurance is working. So use your EQA, they are your source of guidance and support. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to have external sanctions. And that's why I'm saying to you, be honest up front and open with from the beginning, and your external sanctions are minimised. Because if they're not, if they don't know about it and have to work it through, that's when you may have an issue. So talk to them, tell them what's gone well for you, and a lot of it is going well, but we always in a centre have a problem. And again, I can guarantee you it's probably going to be just before the EQA visits, because that's life, is it? That's how it works. So to minimise your external sanctions, you need to make sure your IQA process is there, your appeals and complaints procedure is there, your sampling plan and techniques are there, everything is in place, but don't worry if you have an issue. The EQA is going to be there to be positive and constructive with you. We're not there to do anything else other than to support and guide you. And unfortunately, if you do get an external sanction, act upon it. And if you can't act upon it, come back to the EQA and talk to them. Or come to SCA, phone up your centre support and say, I have this issue, what can I do? And we will be there to help and support you, because that's our role in supporting you. Evidence, evidence. We all have to gather evidence, don't we? So make sure you and your staff have the most up-to-date spec. How many times do we have to go in and say, have you got your up-to-date spec? And people look at you and go, I think so. Well, unfortunately, that's what we're going to be assessing you against. So they'll be available to you. If you haven't got them, ask for them. And then that way you know that they are assessing that, and you as the IQA are assessing to the most up-to-date standards and specifications. Again, I have to just say that standards and specifications, but some people use different words, but so standards and specifications are the specifications for the qualification. So just to ensure that you know what I'm talking about. Some people don't. Some people would use the word standards, others would use the specification. So just to clarify that matter. So make sure you and your staff have the most up-to-date specification for the award that you and they are assessing. Because remember, you are assessing the assessment process and the EQAs are assessing the IQA process. That's how it works. All right, so make sure that that's the way. So specifications, if you haven't got them, please make sure you keep checking the website or phone your centre support for them if you require them. Suitably qualified staff experience to deliver and assess the awards. We all have a starting point, don't we? If we're a new assessor, it's quite difficult sometimes and we get a bit nervous and we're not quite sure. That's where your support and development of your assessors come in. So make sure they're suitably qualified, experienced to deliver, and that they can assess the awards to the standards or the specification. Because if not, you will have a problem further down the line. If you're unsure what the qualifications should be for your assessors, please contact us. It'll be very clear what we need and what we're expecting. And the EQA will also be able to guide you in that as well. So please just ask us and we'll be able to do that. Now, I know it's difficult if you're a peripatetic IQA and you've got a number of centres, but you still need to see the CVs and the experience of the staff that you're working to. So please make sure that you've got all that evidence, because when your EQA comes out, they will be checking for CVs of the staff that you're IQAing. Ensure that you've completed observations of your staff, but be mindful of any actions that may have arisen. So then you can go out, observe your staff, your assessors, go and have a good observation, check if they're meeting standards, whether it's in the pool, whatever it is that they're doing. But the number of times observations have been completed, but they haven't been recorded. It is important that you record it. So if any actions do arise, you can give them the feedback. I've known centres, not through SCA, but other awarding organisations that I've been employed by, that they just don't do it. The observations aren't there, and there's no actions, and then there is an issue and there's a sanction. So please just be careful that you're recording everything. And the learners will, you know, the staff will go, yeah, I saw her do that yesterday in the pool. I was visiting the pool and watching somebody else. I saw you do that. But did you record it? And the possible answer is no, you didn't, because you weren't really looking. But you've done a second observation. You just glanced around and you thought, oh, I'm not too comfortable with that. Why have they done that? I'll question them about that. But because you've walked away from the centre and you were looking at somebody else's observations, you haven't remembered to go back and check it. So always check anything that may have arisen, regardless of whether you're there to do one assessment or you've picked up on something else. Always check it out. Oh, we talked about this earlier on, didn't we? Are there any actions in the previous EQA visit? Please make sure that you address these, because as I said, most of the time the EQAs will give you actions if they are necessary, but you need to make sure they're addressed, because if you don't, it could go forward to a sanction, and that's what you don't want. If you can't do it, speak to your EQA, tell them the reason why, and they will be able to offer you support and guidance. If there isn't an issue with somebody saying to me as an EQA, I haven't done this because this happened, that's fine as long as we understand. Be open, be upfront, and let them know. But you need to know that any actions in the previous EQA visit has been addressed. And don't forget to give feedback to your assessors and your tutors from the EQA visit. It's amazing how many tutors, assessors don't know about the EQA visit. They don't know what the actions were. They don't know about the good practice, which is more important. You know, it's not all negative. There's some excellent practice going on out there, but it's not always recorded. But the EQA visit will probably record that when they say, oh, some excellent work going on in this centre. Feed it back to your assessors. You know, make them feel good about what they've completed for us, because it is important. So the actions might be to feed back this good feedback from your EQA. It isn't always negative. So praise them as well as the negative and the feedback and the developmental points, if that makes sense to people. So standardisation meetings. This is always a biggie. And it's always a biggie because people go, no. And I started off by saying earlier on, you can standardise walking along the corridor. 2 or 3 of you could be walking along the corridor and you can have a conversation about the criteria. That's fine, record it. You don't have to have a meeting round a table. And if you're a peripatetic IQA and you've only got one, there's no reason why, if you're in the right area, that you can't put it together and 3 or 4 of you get together. It can even be done in the pub. Not that I'm encouraging that, but it can be, because it's still standardisation. To have it informal, the conversations are better, but make sure it's recorded. Make sure you understand what you're going to talk about in the standardisation. Is it going to be just a general conversation about a specific qualification? Is it going to be something specific? Have you got your EQA visit report form with you? But it makes no difference where it's held as long as you hold standardisation meetings. If you don't, how do you know the standards are being, what's the word that I'm looking for, that they are compliant, that they are, I'm trying to think of a correct word. If you don't undertake standardisation, there is no, I don't want to use the standardisation word again across the board. Yeah, consistency. Thank you, Claire. I've got Claire Beesmore sitting in the room with me. It's consistent. That was the word I was looking for. But how do you know your standards are consistent? You don't, do you? So the role of the IQA is important to have a standardisation meeting, either on a one-to-one or in a group. There are no hard and fast rules, but you do need to have consistent standards across the board. Thank you, Claire, for that. I do appreciate it, helping me out. So the other information that you would need is your previous IQA reports, because that gives you the information that you may have forgotten, your feedback to assessors, and to ensure the actions have been completed. So if you have an assessor who is on a high risk, and you've given them good developmental feedback in your IQA report, you want to make sure that they've completed that. But if you've got a good team of 10, 15 assessors, you won't always remember. So have your IQA feedback reports with you. So when you pick up their work, you know exactly what you're looking for to ensure that they've continued in the way that you want them to. So they've completed the previous actions and they've moved forward. And remember, you can grade them a different colour, you can make them higher if they've done what you want, or you can lower them if they need to. Because if you have an issue with your assessors, the learners have issues, and that's when your appeals and procedures start to come through, and you don't want any appeals. It's, you know, to give the learners the great experience that they're entitled to, but we want the assessors to have a great experience as well, and that's how we support them through the IQA process and through the EQA process. So previous IQA reports and any feedback to ensure all actions are completed, because your EQA will ask about them as well. The EQA will want to see them. Sampling plan. There are lots and lots of questions about sampling plans. What are the right way of doing a sampling plan? So SCA have got a great example of a sampling plan which will be available to you afterwards. But again, it's what you decide to sample. What's your strategy say you're going to do? What have you decided to do? And there's a number of ways you can do it. So you can do a vertical one unit, or a learning outcome across all learners and all assessors. That enables you to make a comparison against different assessors. Or you could do the horizontal, which is the most common. And in an overall picture, this can be supplemented by additional samples. So you can put extra stuff in there. You can either look at themes, which is the next one, which is the least used. The themes are more difficult in as much as sometimes you may miss something. So the one that I would recommend would be the horizontal. Go for horizontal. It's the most common, it's the easier one, and it gives you an overall picture. So if an EQA comes in and says, just tell me about your IQA sampling plan, what's it showing you? It's easy to read. All right, so remember, it could be a unit or learning outcomes. So create its candidates. You'll have heard of camera, assessors, methods of assessment, evidence, records, and assessment sites. Camera. So to create a sampling plan, you're looking at all candidates or learners, whichever one you want to call them, all your assessors, all methods of assessment, all types of evidence, records, what records you have, and your assessment sites. So depending on how many you've got, it might be you've only got one. So would you look at all the candidates? You'd look at their methods of assessment. They may be very prescriptive depending on the award that you're doing. The records that they've kept, like have they got an assessor tracking sheet? How are they doing that? What records have they kept of their assessment? And the different assessment sites. This is one that is always forgotten, because people tend to just use one site when they're doing IQA, forgetting that they've got more than one site, unless you're peripatetic. But it's amazing how many people in larger organisations tend to just stick with the site, but forgetting that they might have things going on off-site. And so just be aware that you need to do it across all sites. So record it on your sampling plan. So record all the candidates or your learners, which assessor it is, methods of assessment that you're looking at, the evidence that you're looking at, the records, which is your your assessor tracking sheets, and your assessment site. On your sampling plan, you could also record whether they're high, medium, or low. Colour code them if you wish. So it's all candidates across all assessors using all assessment methods across all sites. If you learn that mantra, you're not going to go far wrong. And I learned that 20 years ago when it was the old D3233. So, and it's stuck with me forever. And I think if I do that, it's 100%. That's where the 100% comes in. And people get really tied up with 100%. So one assessor to look at all the assessment methods. You have 10 candidates or learners looking to undertake an award, but the award only has 2 units, but you've got 10 learning outcomes. So you only need to look at 1 learning outcome per learner, and that gives you 100%. This is where it starts. People think they've got to reassess, but if you're reassessing, you're moderating. You're not IQAing, and that's where confusion comes in, because moderation is totally different. This is the same. If you have 2 assessors and 20 candidates, you do exactly the same again. It doesn't matter how many candidates you have. You would then look at it twice to gain the 100%. Do people understand? So you've got 20 candidates per learner. It makes no difference how many candidates you've got. That's a bit of a red herring. You would look at every candidate for 1 outcome. And if you've got 20 or 30, you either look at it twice or 3 times. But once you are happy, you would reduce your sampling plan. Okay, making judgments based on your findings. Has the programme overall been delivered by, it's been planned properly? What would you look at? Remember we were saying earlier on about looking to all the assessor documents? Have you looked at the scheme of work and lesson plan when you've gone in to do an observation? Have they followed the SCA qualification spec? Have they utilised a range of assessment methods that encourages learners' participation? And is the evidence valid, authentic, current, sufficient and reliable? By understanding this, this is how you make your judgment. It's a lot easier than trying to, oh, sorry, press the wrong button. Oh, there you go, sorry. So it's a lot easier to look at these 4 areas and ensuring that you have everything in place to make your judgment. Because if you don't have everything, if they haven't planned the programme properly, how do you know it's current with the standard specification? You don't, do you? How do you know they're hitting every criteria that we wish them to hit? Have they used a range of assessment methods, or are they doing straight didactic teaching when they're doing classroom based? Are the learners there? Have they switched off? So are they switched off? Are they learning? So have they utilised a range of assessment methods? And is the evidence valid, authentic, current, sufficient? So valid, it means it has to meet all the criteria. So it's there. Sorry, is it authentic? Have the learners signed it? Is it that learner's work? Is it current? Is it dated? Is it sufficient? Does it again meet the criteria with what the specifications asking for? And is it reliable? So across the board, is everything the same? Has it been standardised by that assessor? That's how it makes it reliable. I would also encourage you to sign and date everything all the time. You'll get into such a habit that it has to be, because that makes it reliable for us. It makes it current. We don't want to see work coming through that's February's and then you're dating it in August. And you'd be surprised how many times I've seen that happen. So if you sign and date everything, it will also guide you as to whether there are any issues in your sample. Recording. Feedback to assessors should be honest, clear and detailed. It is pointless telling an assessor or a tutor how well they've done when in your heart of hearts you know that they haven't. And if they haven't, you have to give the honest, clear and detailed to help them develop and use for you to support them. Because it does become an issue. Because if you say to them at one stage, oh, you've done really well, and then next time you go, actually that was wrong, but you said in your feedback I've done really well and I've done nothing different. How are you going to counter that argument? You're not going to be able to, are you? So and it doesn't help the assessors if you're not honest and you're not clear with what you want them to do to improve, and it's not detailed. So to see an IQA report, we're saying you did really well for this with this award, it isn't enough. And Ofsted requirements now require good detailed feedback. So it all flows through all the different awarding bodies, all the different regulatory bodies. Everybody's asking for good detailed feedback and developmental feedback. You can be both verbal and written. Remember I've said to you before about having a conversation in a corridor or whatever. That's absolutely fine. Give verbal, but then record it. Write it down to prove that you've done it, and sign and date it. And be constructive. There's nothing worse is just thinking that you've done a good job and somebody said, well, that was awful. Or you'll say things in a jokey manner, but it really to have an impact on people. So be constructive. Say, you've done this really well. However, you might wish to look at this. So it's positive and developmental. Because otherwise, your tutors might get a bit disheartened, and that's not what we want. We're here to give them a good experience. And it makes life easier for you. They know that you're going to be fair with them. And isn't that what we want? Everybody to be fair to each other. It has to be factual. When you say they haven't done something as they should have done, say why they haven't. What is it that they didn't do? Or what is it that they did do that was really good? But, just say to them, do you know what? Claire, you did really well on that. Really well. but I would like to have seen this part of the spec done, recorded. So say how it should be done or what you'd like to see and the reason why. And if your assessor goes, well, I don't agree with that, take it back to standardisation. Talk to others, because we don't all get it right, do we? We all have different viewpoints, and that's the issue with standards, sometimes specifications. It's how they're interpreted. We can all look at something and read the same thing, but we all understand it to be something different. And that's what standardisation is about. Make sure it's hitting the specification that it should be. And so if it's not factual and it's not specific, you will always have an issue because people aren't sure because it's not clear and detailed. IQA report. So you're going to have a report that you're going to have to write. We talked about this earlier on. It's going to be the tutor assessor records or records of assessment. It's going to be your learner portfolios of evidence, if there are any, depending what you're doing. The observations you've carried out and discussions with learners. One of the things that tends to be forgotten is the discussions with learners, because we are really interested in what the learner's experience has been. And the reason we're really interested is because it's their view of the STA and how well the tutor is doing and how well the IQA process has been going on. So you need to have that information with them. If they say to you, well, actually, when she did CPR, she told us that yesterday, but today when we did it, she told us this, so they're confused. It's that sort of thing that you can give the feedback to your tutor. You can be saying to them, that's okay, I'll just check that with the tutor to see what she said, because they may have misinterpreted it, which is fine, but you have to have discussions with learners because their experience is vital, because they are the ones that go out and explain, I've had a great experience or I've had a poor experience, and that has an impact on us all the way through. And then, if depending on the award that you're doing, a witness testimony, if a witness testimony has been completed, as an IQA, you have a right, and you will be asked by an IQA if you've checked it out, because some people, unscrupulously, they write a witness testimony, they get it signed by mum, dad, auntie or uncle, and they put it in the portfolio. So when there's a witness testimony, you want a contact number for that witness. So you can contact them and just check it out. I've seen whole awards done on witness testimonies, and it wasn't good because a learner thought they'd completed and they hadn't. It was a fair few years ago, I admit, but just check it out, because again, it's what that learner has been observed doing. Do they understand the criteria that learner is supposed to be meeting if it's a witness testimony? So I could be saying, Claire did a great job on delivery, but I want to know what they saw. What did that witness see Claire doing? Because that statement isn't enough. Yes, she met all the criteria. Let's have a look and see, have a conversation with them. Let's find out if that witness actually did know what they were looking at. And your previous IQA feedback records. If you notice there's a theme coming through here, the theme is record and standardise and observe all the way through. You're checking out every step of the way of the assessment process. As I said earlier, you are assessing the assessment process. The EQAs are effectively assessing the IQA process. That's how the quality cycle will work on this. So everybody is checking each other. So by the time we go to certification, we are all really comfortable that everything is as it should be. Supporting your assessors and tutors. There are ways that we can do it, and I think we've touched on a few of them already. Standardisation meetings. We've talked about how these can be on a one-to-one, walking down a corridor, or actually in a meeting in a pub or wherever, in whichever format that you want. So that's absolutely fine, but you must have recorded standardisation meetings. These can be done in a book. You don't have to be having all typed out, as long as we have a record of standardisation, because we do need it. It is so important that everybody is making that. So the main ways of supporting is to help improve practice, and this is what we're doing. So good developmental individual feedback. So all the way through, make sure it's developmental and it's individual to that member of staff. You can have one-to-one meetings that we talked about earlier. The IQA, remember the IQA report should be completed after every time that you've done any IQA sampling. Unfortunately, it isn't happening. So every time you do an IQA report, any IQA standardisation, you should have a record of it. Because if you don't, how do you know about it? How do you know? If somebody else takes over from you, what do they know? So there isn't a time scale. So every time, unfortunately, it sounds like a lot of work, but if you're doing any sampling of any sort, it has to be recorded. There isn't a time scale. Now, it might be that you have a course finishing this week. It's about your planning. I am going to plan to see, I'm going to use Claire again this week, but I might miss her next week because she's on a low risk. But then I might pick it up again the following week on something else, depending on her courses. It is down to you to plan these courses, but whatever you do as an IQA, it must be recorded. You must have a report. Otherwise, how do you know? How does the EQA know this? And don't forget, your report doesn't have to be in detail. It has to be on your IQA report for what we see. However, you need to just say, I observed, that's your report. The rest is your observation. The rest is that it's very difficult, isn't it? Because if I don't know your timescales, but it's on the timescales of your report. So if you're only doing a course once every 4 months, I would be expected to see 4 IQA reports because you'll be IQAing all of them. So one-to-one meetings, as I was just talking about, you can have those working on undertaking annual training needs analysis and supporting CPD. One of the things that you do find is that assessors and tutors aren't completing their CPD as we required. They must undertake CPD, whether it's reading the manual, whether it's reading something off the STA website, anything like that, but they need to do CPD. And you will identify if there are any training needs as well. So that's about giving advice. So you need to say, you're weak in this area or you need development in this area. So please go and have a look at this website, or please look at this. So it will be easier for it that way. It doesn't have to be anything in great detail, but they can just read a journal. They can read the specific up-to-date specifications. That's past the CPD. So IQAs keep their own record at every standardisation meeting, or ATC keeps a record. It could be either, if in all honesty. I would suggest both. And the reason I would suggest that you keep your own record at every standardisation meeting is because if you don't, you have no record of anything. You forget what you say. And the ATC keeps a copy of that record, because the ATC is actually the one that is the responsible body for us. So I would use the ATC as well. Do copies of your report, because you should have centre records. Although the IQA has records, they're centre records. Remember that. So your centre is the ATC. So please make sure that although you keep your own record and you may go off and IQA somewhere else, that there is a copy on the centre at the centre as well, at the ATC. Because if you don't, and for some unfortunate reason you don't come back to that centre, there is no record. So the ATC should have a record of that as well. So giving advice regarding the qualifications on methods, this goes back to the standardisation meetings. You can either do it as a one-to-one. Give advice regarding the qualification on methods to help with the assessment process. I mentioned this earlier on when I was saying you could be walking along the corridor and somebody asks you, how do I do this? It's giving that advice. One of the things I can guarantee that won't be happening with this is you won't record it. And that's where I go back to say, record every conversation. It forms part of your standardisation, because you guarantee if one person is having a problem with that issue with the qualification method, others will be as well. So if you can feed it on. And feed it on through email, you've got evidence then of standardisation. So documentation to support your roles. ST has some excellent documentation, and I think it's one of the best I've seen in a long time, because everything is out there to support your role. So you've got the Safety Training Awards Internal Quality Procedures for Centres, the IQA Assurance Report, Internal Quality Assurance Assessors Observation Performance Report, Internal Quality Assurance Frequently Asked Questions. We will be adding to those frequently asked questions today because of the questions that are coming through. So we will add to that. But when I've looked at that, everything that you need to know is there. And if you don't understand, please contact your EQA or your centre support and they will be able to help you. But that guides you through. The procedures are there, you report, use your report because that guides you through everything you should be doing. Your observation performance report, everything is there. And your frequently asked questions. When I looked at those again the other night, I thought, you know what? There isn't a question there that you wouldn't want because it's always there. And how much do we forget? You know, sometimes you'll think, I'm sure it's that, but I'm not sure. Go back and have a look, and they'll be updated regularly on the website for you.
If I can just say, Ellie, there'll be a section on everyone's screens saying handouts, and we put those documents on there for IQA to download as well.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So as I said, just look at all those. If there's any questions and you're not sure about anything, but they are very clear, they're very usable, they're very, very good. So if you're unsure of your role, just remember you're an IQA, you're not moderating, so you're sampling. Moderation is where you're reassessing, so it is slightly different, but you're doing it over a sampling process. So that's where the evidence comes together. So just to recap slightly then, because we are at the beginning, starting again. So what I would suggest then you would do, is that you start to look at the main functions. We looked at the main functions of quality assurance, so compliance, ensuring consistency of standards and accuracy, but you identifying issues and trends, and record keeping. And I will keep going on about record keeping and documentation. How you carry out your role, and we've just talked about all the evidence available to you, the SCA documentation. It's there. Document for planning and implementing. Look at the quality procedures for centres. Planning and supporting, that's in the quality and procedures for centres as well. Supporting tutor assessment performance, your observation report, and recording documentation and information. It's always there for you, that recording of information. We also discussed about the planning and implementing, about your procedure. On the very top of this page is quality procedures. You know, if you're new to IQA and you're a new ATC, please do use it. That way you know that everything is in place, that you've planned your high, medium and low. So if there is, I just need to go back a slide. Somebody just passed me a question about the sample plans, about an action point. What is supposed to go in there? Anything that you want as an action, but don't forget, if it's an action point, actions can be positive as well as negative. You know, it could be that you've seen some really good practice. Put it as an action point. Well done. Keep up with this good practice. It's not just about having negatives. If it's developmental, or please arrange with me your next observation to ensure that, anything like that. So that's what goes in there. I think a lot of people think action points are always negative, but it's nice to see in the action point, well done team, this is got done, you've done this really well, or well done for this best practice. I really like the way that you've done this. Please ensure that you do this in the future. Don't keep it as a negative. Keep action points as positive. Although, as I said, action points are positive and negative. Don't just always look on the negative side. We're not looking to catch people out. We're looking for best practice as well. And there's some excellent practice going on out there. So as an IQA, praise for good practice, support the poor practice or the areas for improvement. And as an EQA, we'll also support you on that as well. Because don't forget, EQAs will also come out and do observations of your training. And that can be an action point. Your action point could also be, the EQA observed you do this, well done. For some reason, we seem to be jumping about, Brett, I don't know, and stuff. I'll put that down for a second. and stuff. I think we're having a bit of a technical issue there, just gives them one to jump. So going back there, so we looked at documentation, planning and assurance, and the liaison with the EQA. Please do use your EQAs in the right way. I know it can be scary if you've not had a visit before, and I do understand that people had some horrendous experiences, but our EQAs are there to support and guide you. We're not there to catch you out or anything, but to offer support and guidance and to move you and develop your centre. So please do talk to us. Remember about gathering your information. On here, it's got your internal quality assurance report. Use that to gather your information if you're not sure. It guides you very, very carefully and thoroughly through everything you need to do. Your observation report, really great observation report. Make sure that you use it. And your sample plan, make sure you choose the one that suits you better. As I said, I would use the horizontal system because I find that the best, because I can identify if there's something, if there is an issue, but you can use whichever way you wish. But you need to be able to talk to your EQA and say, I chose this for this reason. We need to understand. So that we've talked about, so that's about the assurance report. Do you remember we talked about camera? So I'd like to be hearing you all shouting out what it all means, but I'll go through it again. It's candidates, assessments, methods of assessment, evidence, records and assessment sites. Please don't forget your assessment sites because it's amazing how many people do. And if you remember the mantra I said earlier on, all candidates or learners across all assessor using all assessment methods and record your findings on the feedback. And please do use positive feedback where you can and identify good practice because that's really good. So coming towards the end now, we'll talk about making judgments based on your findings. The judgment is down to you. You are very qualified, experienced people. You know if something is good and you know if something isn't as it should be. So please ensure everything's been planned properly, that they're following the most up-to-date STA specification, and that the evidence is valid, authentic, current, sufficient, and reliable. Another tip I would give you, if you wish to use it, is that if you're looking at portfolios, many years ago they were talking about colour coding and IQAs use red. You could use that if you wish, because it's easy to see where an IQA has been into a portfolio and looked at it. It's very easy. It used to be blue for assessors, red for IQAs, and green for EQAs. That isn't the case anymore, but I know when I IQA, I like to still use red because it identifies to the EQA very clearly what I've looked at, and you're not searching through it if you haven't recorded it properly on your assessment, your IQA documentation. So I've had another question come through. It says, if I'm an IQA for my ATC, can I use a manager to do an IQA for my courses, or should we have two people able to do an IQA? So this is, if I am the IQA for an ATC, can I use a manager to do an IQA for my courses? Is your manager qualified, first and foremost? Are they experienced? Or should we have two people able to do IQA? It depends on the size of the centre, first and foremost, because for ATCs, because we've got large national ATCs and they've got more than one, and you've got ATCs, a small band of people, which is 2 or 3 or even less. So it depends on the size of your organisation. So I can say, can I use a manager? Yes, you can use a manager if they have the right qualifications to do their IQA. If they are working towards their IQA, remember all their work has to be signed off by yourself as a qualified IQA. And should we two people be able to do IQA? You can have as many IQAs as you want in your centre. The choice is yours. However, they must all be authorised by STA, so to ensure that we maintain our quality assurance. And it makes no difference whether you use a manager or you use another learner who is not part of the course, who has got IQA qualifications and they've been approved. The choice is actually yours. We can't determine how many you use per centre. We can determine if they are suitable for the role. That's the rule of thumb. So please make sure that if you are using somebody else, they have the qualification, or if they're working towards that, you are second line IQA and confirming their their findings until they are qualified. Okay, so I hope that clarifies it. It's one of those questions that there is no right or wrong answers. You can have as many IQAs as you wish, but that an IQA cannot, an assessor cannot be an IQA for the same course. That's the other thing. So if you've got 2 people and both are assessors and both IQAs, you can use both of them, but they cannot IQA their own work. It has to be somebody else. It has to be different, because that ensures the consistency and the reliability of the sampling and the qualification. It has to make sure that you're giving the quality procedures the confidence that they're right. If you're assessing and you're IQAing your own work, it doesn't work, does it, if you think about it logically? So moving on, let's just finishing off now then. Your IQA report. Make sure your IQA report is full of all things that you have seen, those that is good practice and those that for areas of improvement and developmental. It is so important that the assessors or tutors get that feedback, because sometimes you'll find that tutors and assessors hand in portfolios or they're observed and there's no feedback. So you do need to do feedback. Make sure you follow the report. Remember to have your discussions with your learners. It's part of your assessment process. Your standardisation, as we've talked about on and off, it can be one-to-one meetings. It can be a good in a room with 4 or 5 people. It could be in a room with 15, 16 people. It depends on you and your organisation. But please make sure the standardisation meetings are held and any EQA visits are reported back, because there's always some good points in there that could help you. And coming straight back to our documentation and supporting the role, please do use STA, because we are there to help and support, and we're there if you need us on the end of a telephone or on the end of an email. Read our quality procedures, our documentation, read the quality assurance report, read our observation report. It guides you exactly what you've got to do. And please look frequently ask questions, because they're being updated all the time as soon as we can. All right, so I hope that's been of use to you. Oh, no, sorry, it doesn't want to move to the last screen. There you go. So for support for you as an IQ, as I keep saying, please remember that we are here to help, are always here to help you. Contact your assigned administrator. They're happy to assist, and if they can't help you, they will know somebody who can help you, and email us or telephone us whenever you wish for that support. So I hope it's been useful for you. I hope it hasn't been too daunting and that I've rushed through things. It's one of those things that when you start this process, you either understand it straight away or it will take you a long time to understand it. And we do accept that STA. Not everybody understands everything straight away. So please do use us for support. So thank you ever so much. And that's the end. Okay.
So if anyone's got any feedback as well for our webinars, if you can just send that across to the email shown on screen, that would be much appreciated. And if anyone has got any inquiries, just as Ellie said, just get in touch with us. Okay, thank you all for joining in today and listening. Thank you.